This episode of Ticket Volume is brought to you by us, Invigate. Get service operations under control in no time. Get 1 free month of our software solution by going to try.invigate.com. Ticket Volume is proud to present 3 of our favorite past guests in the IT industry. Claire Agutter is known for being pragmatic and clear. Claire is a service management consultant and author, nominated as one of Computer Weekly's top 50 women in tech, and is the chief architect for Verism. She leads Scopism as a SIAM evangelist, and she's also an active member on the popular SIAM community, which now boasts over 3,000 members. She also is the sole author for ITIL 4, Digital and IT Strategy book. Mark Smalley, our second guest, is the ancient IT philosopher, as he's calling himself. He's known for his writing, which is bountiful. His most recent is IT Service by Design, which was co-written with Catherine Zuim. To his many contributions to ITIL, Mark has contributed and authored so many great books. He is a consultant trainer with a dizzying speaking schedule, and he has held several advisory and ambassador stints, along with a strong tenure of operations development and IT roles. Rob England, our third guest, was known as the IT skeptic, but if you haven't noticed, his content now is a much more optimistic, so he had to drop that moniker. He is a top voice for new ways of working and also author to many great titles and concepts, the most recent being Open Management, written in conjunction with Dr. Cherry Vu. And it's not only a great introduction into the new ways of managing, but also an invitation to their open management community. Welcome to Ticket Volume, news and information for improving IT experiences. I am your lucky host, Matt Beran. In each episode, I get to chat and talk with different leaders, authors, and crazy people in the service management industry about technology, business, and this episode is going to have even more of that. And hey, do you want to continue this conversation after this episode? Comment on YouTube or on Spotify or LinkedIn or anywhere, really. I'm going to hear it. If you put some content out there, some suggestion of a way that we can improve and spend our budget, I'm going to hear it. And I hope you're having a great day and a great week. Please share our podcast with someone. For now, though, let's begin. Welcome to Ticket Volume, Claire Agutter, Mark Smalley, and Rob England.
Yay!
Thanks, Matt.
We're back, I made it through it.
I thought that was wonderful. Clear Agutter. Thinking about the Knepin framework, if you're clear and I'm confused, I guess that makes you complex, Rob.
I love it. We're the different quadrants of the Knepin.
The 5 quadrants.
That makes good. Matt chaos.
Yeah.
Actually, this fits very well, actually. And I love that you brought up Knepin right away, actually. You should get an award, actually. This is the fastest Knepin has been brought up on our podcast.
Get it in quick, yeah.
Yeah, get it in there. Get it in. And I did have to bring up specifically, though, that last year's episode is our #1 playing episode on Spotify. It has been streamed the most times on Spotify. And when I listened to it recently, I realized why. And for me anyway, the reason that it really stood out is there was tons of really practical advice on how to stay relevant, how to think about our news hype cycle as it is, and to kind of prepare for what's coming next. And so I want to do more of that this year, if possible, bringing on the same guests. I expect the same great outcomes, but we'll see how that turns out. So what I would love to do is just take a moment to reflect with each of you. What changed over the last year? What were the big improvements or degradations in our industry and in our culture that have impacted technology, IT, and business? Mark, I would love to hear from you first. I'll put you right in the hot seat.
Yeah, well, fortunately, we didn't prepare the questions, which makes it more interesting. The first thing that comes to mind from my personal perspective, you said I self-identify as a philosopher. That means I think about lots of things. I often find myself in a little bubble, completely isolated from people who actually do real work. And from time to time, as I'm exposed to practitioners, as I've been last month, I've been doing a little bit of work for a cost cutter in the retail sector in the Netherlands, and confronted with people who actually have to do this stuff. And it does bring you down to earth and realize that although you would like to think that people are business value focused and doing all this progressive kind of stuff, you've got to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
And they're dealing with regular stuff based on what's worked for years and years and years. And they've only got the energy to make small steps. And you do have to take that into consideration. So for me, so it's not really an observation about where the industry's gone, but where it's bringing me down to earth as well. So that's something to consider. To consider being considerate for people when I expose them with my latest book. It's the third one since we've last spoke, by the way. I've been busy writing. When we speak to people, be considerate, be aware of their position, their difficulties, and take it step by step.
It's great advice and a great experience to have. I have the same thing now. Being on ticket volume, oftentimes, I get my head in the clouds. I think about I'm in the space where all of my guests have done all of this really hard work to make all these massive improvements and cultural change. And I just assume that everyone is coming along for the ride until I go to a client's site and they're still using Excel to keep track of where all their laptops are. And that's when the reality just slaps me in the face. And I'm brought back to reality and thinking, yeah, that's right. Life is not ticket volume, Matt. There are real challenges out there. And Claire knows about this because she's part of the SIAM community, which I think when I read it, that's all you're reading about is very practical applications of technology and business. What do you think has changed this year, Claire? What's really got you thinking about the improvements in our industry?
So one thing that's changed for me is how I interact online, how I consume information. So I've always been a fairly business user of social media. I've never had a Facebook account. I used to use Twitter to follow people like Rob when he was the IT skeptic, LinkedIn. I think there was a time when that was an absolutely wonderful tool for communicating with people. And I used to post, interact. It was a pleasure to meet people from other countries, discuss questions. And I think one of the things that has changed, and I think, Rob, you have a rule about this, about social media.
All social media channels degenerate into babble.
And what I found this year is the volume of information is too much. The quality of the information is less good. The authenticity of the communication is less good. And this, I'm getting to the point, this to me links to the fact that this is when we're kind of 18 months into it now, but we set up the SIAM community as an online space specifically for people who have an interest in SIAM, whether they are vaguely interested, absolute experts. It is a niche space, and it feels like we're almost coming full circle back to the early days of the internet, where we just used to hang out in forums together and talk about a band that we liked, or a particular TV program. And that's I don't know what the observation is, but I think how we interact and communicate online is changing. I think the nature of professional community is going to change, and there are going to exist some of the generic channels which will be AI bots consuming information that's been created by AI bots and just liking each other's little posts. And I think there's potentially a risk associated with this, because we go on into our little SIAM silo. Do we miss part of the big picture? But I think this has been, it's been a necessity in order to kind of shrink the amount of information that we're consuming. It's a different world online to what it was when we first started on a personal and a professional basis.
Yeah, strange, isn't it? You're certainly seeing a shift. On the one hand, you've got people who are very receptive to concerns about diversity, inclusion, doing the right ethics, doing the right thing. And on the other hand, you've got blatant socially conditioned entitlement.
Bro culture.
Yeah, that's right. Yes,
One of the great toxins of IT is bro culture.
Yeah.
Tech bro culture, personified by Lord Elon, of course, Emperor of Mars. But we're polarizing. And so there's two big factors there. One is we're polarizing, and it's becoming, I've always been strong in my opinions, but it's becoming impossible to have a reasoned conversation in the open channels like LinkedIn. And so we're sort of drawing the wagons into a circle, and going back to closed communities, like back to ITSM is a great one on Facebook. But the second one, of course, is the AI and its completely unknown impact on the online content. I'm less pessimistic about that. Right? I'm trying to be Mr. Sunny Optimist these days, and I was going to say one of the biggest shifts I've seen in the last year is the positive aspects of AI and its usefulness. And so places like LinkedIn, I'm going to persist because A, there are still humans in there somewhere, and you don't want to get stuck in your bubble clear, like you said. And B, you've got to stay in touch. You've got to keep a broad perspective. And even if some of it's generated by AI, some of it's pretty good stuff. So I saw just yesterday, I'd like to give credit to people, and my memory is shot and I can't. But just yesterday, there was a post where a professor at one of the universities gave Richard Cook's paper, How Complex Systems Fail, has 18 reasons why complex systems fail. So he gave that paper to Claude, and he said, give me some more reasons. And it generated up to reason number 26. And they're freaking brilliant. They are just...
I saw your comment on that you put that post into my feed, which is the thing that we can't lose.
Yeah. Claude is, I think Claude is a she, by the way. And I think she's trying to seduce me. Because when and I'm very receptive to these approaches.
Yeah, you are.
But because I have some lovely conversations with her, and she says, "Oh, what an insightful comment." Now, I wonder whether she says that to all the boys.
Yeah, she does. But she's getting,
Rob.
But it's getting, they're getting into the psychology of it. But those 26 points just blew my brain. It was genius stuff, and it was first cut. He said he just fed it, and that's what he got. And I find the same thing. I'm using AIs every second day when writing books, right? I just ask. We've created an AI called Open Management,
fabulous name.
Who's read everything, isn't it? Yeah. And he's read everything. It's read, there we go. It's read everything that that Teal Unicorn ever wrote. and so you can ask on what to tell Unicorn think about Blur, and it just, and so I ask on what do I think about this, and it goes and thank you, and then I pop that in the book and I start working on it. It's just the first cut, right? But with my memory again, it just spews out everything I think about something, and then I use that. And so and the thing is, I'll look at it and I'll go, there's two things you forgot on. So it triggers me to things that are not in there. But also, you've told me three things I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be anytime I use an AI, it triggers me to stuff that wasn't in there. And it reminds me of stuff that's in there that I didn't have.
And maybe
Wonderful.
this is a coping mechanism for the amount of information we consume.
Totally.
We've outsourced a chunk of our thinking, and that that is fantastic. I have no issue with that. I guess I don't want to be the pessimistic one here. I think with every new technology, there is a selection of consumers who use it in a dark way, and
Of course.
AI is, only the latest in a big stream of these. And I did see something brilliant on LinkedIn the other day, and again, I would credit, but I have also forgotten, where somebody had trained an AI bot to time waste telephone scammers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And to be positive about the negative, the great pioneers of every online technology have been porn, spam, and crime.
Yeah.
They take the technology forward. Porn is
Yeah.
right at the front of any new technology, and so the negative is that humans do these negative things, but the positive is that it actually pushes the technology at the same time. Am I pulling one from too far out to left field there?
No, not really. Not really. But what I would love to do is ask you specifically, Rob, because that is a very unique use case. There's a lot of people using AI, so-called AI, today's version of AI,
LLMs, yeah,
as public AIs, but very few people have done what you have done, and that is to take your own knowledge and fed a model with your own knowledge to then get answers back from that knowledge. At least to me, that stands out as unique. Does anyone know someone else doing that? Certainly no organizations I know.
I have heard of others doing it. Ben Reid is a Kiwi, R-E-I-D.
Oh, yeah.
It's a Kiwi that if you're not following Ben Reid, you need to be following Ben Reid. Extraordinary. I've met him from Christchurch, who's right up the front on this stuff, right? And he's deep into it. What was I going to say there? So we're being swamped by, we've talked for years about the deluge of information. And I do think AI is a big, big part of coming to terms with that.
Yeah.
And for me personally, as I say, my brain is starting to go. I got my pension the other day, so I'm now also ancient with you, Mark. So for me, it is wonderful to be able to, people worry about, all my content is going to be
stolen
in the LLM. And for me personally, anyway, I say, great.
Yeah.
The more that all the LLMs sound like me, the more credible I'm going to sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to train the LLMs to sound just like Rob England. Totally. I'm there for it.
Yeah, there's a guy, Andy Clark, professor, who's done some work on. He's famous for two things. He's popularized the concept of the predictive mind, which is the idea that when you're looking at something, your brain doesn't have the energy to process all of the bits that it's receiving. So what it does is it forms an expectation of what a room usually looks like, what a person usually looks like, and it just matches the difference, spot the difference, because that's energy efficient. So that's predictive mind. I think what he's been more involved, he's popularized that, but what he's been more involved in developing is the concept of the extended mind, where it sort of gives you a bit of a headache to think about it, but thinking about who you are, your consciousness, your identity, your personality, that it's not only what's in your brain, but what's in your body as well. And even the tools that you use. And he used as an example of, I think of somebody with a memory problem, Alzheimer's possibly, who needs early Alzheimer's, needs tools to help him function in real life. And he makes the case that if you would remove those tools from him, there's just a checklist that he uses to survive and communicate with people, you would be changing his identity. He wouldn't be the same person. He wouldn't exhibit the same behavior without these tools. So in a sense, that's part of his personality. And you could make the same case for the use of AI. If that enhances who you are, it's sort of weird. It's a weird thought, but it's...
All these things become an extension of your body, of yourself.
Yeah.
Right. I notice that when I'm driving. So I've got two cars, being a good contributor to the global climate crisis. I've got two cars. One is a big four-wheel drive, so it feels like you're sitting inside a room and moving the room around. But the other one is an MX-5 sports car. And when I sit in the MX-5, it feels like a pair of jeans.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like an extension to my body. I'm completely infused with that machine. And it is absolutely part of Rob England when I'm driving. It's like my clothes. It's just an extension to myself. And so I think absolutely the same is true with Om, right? Om is now an extension to my brain. I totally hear what you're saying, Mark.
Yeah.
Om and I interact.
Yeah, and there's another thing. It was one of Dave Snowden's friends, Nora Bateson. I've come across an interview.
I wrote about her this last night. What?
Yeah, she's good. You should be aware of her existence. She said something that really made an impact on me, and she said, "Who can I be when I'm with you? Who am I when I'm with you?" In other words, when I'm with you, Claire, I'm a different kind of Mark than when I'm with Rob or
Hi,
Cherry.
Cherry.
Oh, yeah.
So it's coffee.
Yeah, coffee. The coffee lady.
Nice to see you.
And it really got me thinking about multiple personalities. I'm not just Mark. I only exist in a certain relation, in a context, the context of a relationship with somebody else who influences who I am. The lady I'm writing the design thinking book on with at the moment, she influences my thinking. I write differently because I'm aware that she's participating. It's crazy. And she doesn't even have to do anything. It's what Dave Snowden calls in his work on estuarine mapping. He talks about the constraints and constructors that you can, sort of people and things that you can put into an organization that they have effect on. And he talks about the constructor being a constructor by contagion. You don't actually have to do anything, but the fact that you put this person or thing or concept in an organization has an effect on people. Weird stuff.
Totally. And I think what's great about this is, for me anyway, is I'm always trying to figure out how we can turn what we do to each other as people, our relationships between our people, how do we operationalize that stuff? How do we get a team of people to treat another team of people differently? How do we get that bit of how that team talks to people from that team to change the way that they talk to that other team? Because it's usually based in some bias or some other cultural element. Legal is the perfect example, because we all hate lawyers, right? So it's easy to dump on lawyers. And then when you get to your first organization, you're like, oh, the legal department, I don't really want to talk to them. So
it's gonna get harder, right? So I mean, the other big observation for me in the past year is the obvious one, that we're going backwards, and so my focus next year is to try and be Mr. Sunshine, but in the context of little islands of sunshine in a gathering storm, right? Hanging on to the shreds of enlightenment, in the face of the whole world shifting to being really polarized and fighting it out, and shifting to the right, and glorifying greed and glorifying cruelty to the underprivileged. And that's going to really influence the workplace, not just in the USA, but all around the shift is happening all around the world. We've got the free dumb movement, as I call it, here in New Zealand now.
Mm.
That we're back, and you all saw the haka in the New Zealand Parliament probably on video, when the ultra-right New Zealand are trying to wind back 50 years of social progress and racial equity by undoing all the good work of the last 50 years, and the Maori are not going to stand for it, and good on them. But this shift to the right is just so obvious all around the world, and so that's going to polarize the workplace just as much as anywhere else. We're going to, I've been saying for years that work is political, but it's going to get more political now. And some workplaces, the culture is going to be fairly unified. You're going to all be tech bros, as we were talking about before, and it's going to be an ultra-right workplace, and they're all going to be happy with their misogyny and their greed together. Or they're going to be some super happy clappy left-wing lovey, workplace. They're all a bunch of aging hippies and young hippies, but the problem is in the workplaces that are a mixture of the two.
Yeah, but you can bring this back to boring IT stuff as well. If you think about changes within states, changes between states, states in the sense of political entities. Think about how IT strategies need to adapt to changing politics, changing regulations, changing geopolitical risks. Think about when global supply chains that we've been relying on for the past decades are suddenly disrupted. Suddenly you find you don't have access to part of the supply chain that you used to have. Think about cybersecurity as well, both within states and interference from other states. So
that's another one we seem to be going backwards on. Sorry, but cybersecurity, to me, I don't feel like we're making any progress there at all. I feel like we're losing control.
Interesting.
Sorry, Mark, go on.
No, I love that. That is such a bold claim, because I think, to me anyway, cybersecurity has never been better. So talk about that, because we had what I call the largest cybersecurity event in our time in IT that has ever happened was this year, July 19th, CrowdStrike. And I was at a security conference on July 19th.
I rest my case.
You know how many people were at that conference? Oh, yeah, I guess that is a good point. Yes, cybersecurity it has never been worse because of CrowdStrike. But don't you think that sort of like opened our eyes to, and I point at NIST too constantly, because that supply chain aspect of cybersecurity is, I think, our largest weak point. And it feels like people are starting to address it, or like at least the certifications, the compliance is actually starting to lead the way for that. Am I off base on that?
I think, there's kind of a sort of a bit of magical thinking, I think, around particularly supply chain, and CrowdStrike did hit that, because the old idea of IT was that IT, you could run it as a black box, and you just put your little requirements into the black box and shook it, and something fell out the other end, and all the complexity was hidden. We didn't have to worry about that. And then all of a sudden, something like CrowdStrike happens, and we go, oh, maybe we should have a little look in the box. And, from my lens at the moment, looking at service integration and looking at multi-vendor environments, we have to understand at a minimum who's doing what, who have we got relationships with, where is our data, where are the risks. And I'm as kind of guilty of this on a personal level as I think some corporations are. Put things into Dropbox. I assume Dropbox is going to be there tomorrow. I put them into OneDrive. I assume OneDrive's going to be there tomorrow. Occasionally, I might do a backup onto a external hard drive that I've got shoved in a drawer somewhere. But we have got very comfortable with certainty around our IT systems without, I think, asking some of the challenging questions. And it takes something big to make us ask the challenging questions. I do, one of the organisations I do work with is a university, and they have a very strong kind of research and scientific school. And they are fighting off attacks from foreign state players at a pace that they have never seen, and they at least have an understanding of the risk. But I think there's a lot of organisations don't even understand the risk.
There's some deep fundamental, getting back to, specifically the cybersecurity, there are some deep fundamentals that we as philosophers of work understand about complex systems, right? That society doesn't understand and that organizations don't understand. One of them is that human error is going to happen. It's just a fundamental. And another is that there's no such thing as zero risk. And yet, in the security context, the PR consequences of the slightest security leak are catastrophic. And so governors and managers have to work on a principle of zero risk for security, which is unachievable and is fundamentally impossible. And so that's the first sort of polarity tension, is between the expectation and the ability to achieve zero risk. And I think the second and related factor is that the security all seems to still be perimeter security. Cybersecurity is not my field, so forgive me. I'm sort of looking in from the outside. But we still seem to be stuck in this concept of keeping the bad guys out with a fence, which is, once they're inside the fence, you're screwed. You're absolutely gone. And so that's what I mean. I just don't think we're making progress with security. We're still trying to just build better fences when the reality is you cannot have a perfect fence.
I'm not a cybersecurity. In fact, I think cybersecurity is my Achilles heel of all of my broad interests in IT. It's certainly the weak spot. But one of my friends who is in that area, he pointed out to something really fundamental. He said, if you look at the role of the Chief Information Security Officer in an organization, try and establish whether it has been put into place to be able to conveniently blame when things go wrong, or whether cybersecurity and the risks are understood and embraced, for lack of a better word, at board level. Is the board really aware, concerned, or have they outsourced it to somebody they can fire when it goes wrong?
Man, that is bleak. I think you might be right that it's easier to sweep it under the rug, right? Like it's easier to ignore it and just have a figurehead to blame.
It's a polarity tension, right? And it's unreconcilable. There isn't a solution to a polarity tension. You have to say yes and.
Yes, and.
Yes, it's impossible to secure the system. Yes, we're going to have cyber hits. Yes, our data is going to get spewed all over the internet. How do we design our organization in such a way that we are resilient to that happening? That's all we can do. But that's not the mentality of the public. They will not forgive the slightest outage. And therefore, it's not the mentality of the governors and the executives. They just keep demanding zero risk instead of accepting the polarity and addressing it. But to me, that's my general sense.
It ties in with the last book I published, which is called Selling XLA to C-Level. But it could equally have been called Selling IT, anything to C-Level. And it's the idea that you have to not only have to address rational business impact of whatever you're doing. Is it going to sell more, happier customers, lower better social responsibility, those kind of end terms. So address the rational risks, but be aware of the simple corporate politics in organizations. Executives are high achievers in competitive environments, and the last thing they want is the risk of yet another failed IT project on their CV. So give it to somebody else, please. I don't want to be involved. I'm going to leave the firm in half a year's time anyway. So you get involved with these kind of the truth versus reality. My little Machiavelli book is still up within reach of that on that shelf. It's all still, was it 1532, 1534? It seems as if it was written yesterday.
But we're still stuck in this business and IT structure, which doesn't make sense anymore. And, saying that if something goes wrong, you blame the CISO. Why? Why isn't that everybody who sat around that board table's problem? And there was some Gartner research was published that I saw the other week, and it was saying, CIOs are being challenged to deliver return on investment from AI.
Yeah,
and
duh.
Why is that the CIO's problem? Why isn't that everybody around the board table's problem? And I think this, you can understand it in the beginning when we were playing with IT, but now that IT is embedded in every single thing that we do, we have to talk about the organization as a whole and move beyond this kind of, it's a tech problem. It drives me mad when you see something on the news and it's an IT failure. It's crippled the business. You're like,
yet another.
Is it? Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
Totally. I think there are three primary resources that an organization has to play with, right? And they're money, human capability, not people. People are the hosts of the capability, which is the resource. We don't own the people. Slavery is illegal now. So we have money, capability, and information, right? And they're the three primary resources of the organization. And so the executives and the board and everybody outside of IT need to be adept at understanding and managing money, capability, and information equally. And so once again, no one says it's a money failure that put us out of business and it's the CFO's fault, right? But we say it's an IT failure and it's the CIO's fault. When no one says it's a people failure and it's HR's fault, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I agree, Claire, that we have to regard it as just as integral to the business as money and capability. You still have specialists, just like you have HR and finance division, groups within the organization. You still have specialized experts for that resource, but it's not all on them. It's just a resource across the organization.
Yeah. And the other thing with my service integration hat on again is it's now outside the organization as well. That there's the number of organizations that are completely self-contained is very, very small now. So we don't just have to be thinking about what's happening in our organization. We have to be thinking about the tendrils that we have into other organizations and that they have back into us. And, when we look at it from a SIAM perspective, there's a massive opportunity to create these resilient operating models with the ability to flex and change really easily. But again, there is that risk if you just go, outsource that, not my problem, that something's going to come back and bite you.
Oh my gosh, this is such a good topic because it's about responsibility and accountability and how do we actually all get that together. I've been preaching at the IT industry for the last 5 years about bringing your customers along, put them on your agile teams, build your products and services with them. I think it's commonplace now. Everyone does that.
Yeah, there's a more fundamental shift here that Claire's alluding to is when I started doing IT in my day, right? IT was well, the organization was a fortress, right?
Yeah.
You had walls around the organization, and what the organization did was inside the walls, and what everyone else did was outside the walls. Nice, clear, crisp delineation of what constituted the organization. And now, in a networked world, the organization is like a mountain, right? So you can point to the top of the mountain and say, that's the organization, but show me that what is the edge of a mountain, right? Mountains don't have an edge. They just slowly turn into foothills that join with another mountain. And, there is no crisp delineation of except for Mount Taranaki in New Zealand. You've all seen that satellite photo of the perfect circle around Mount Taranaki where they drew the boundaries of the national park. But, in general, there is no nice, crisp, clear delineation of what constitutes the edge of the mountain. And the same with the organization. That the information is flowing in and out of the organization. The capability is flowing in and out of the organization. I don't know whether the money, I think we cling to our money a bit more tightly, but
Totally.
no, value flows in and out of the organization.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. That's right. You're talking about economic exchange between entities, and it's all framed within the relationship. So you think about the kind of relationship you have with your customers or your suppliers. Is it transactional, sort of one-off, and very standardized? Which is perfectly legitimate, but you act differently in those kind of relationships than when you've built something that has a long history and is probably going to have a long future as well, where there's a high degree of trust, not only in the organization's technical abilities, but also in their integrity, their benevolence even. Do they... Influence is like Nora Bateson says about individuals. Who am I when I'm with you? Same applies to organizations. What kind of an organization can I be in this organization relationship with another party? So you're thinking, and you just going back half an hour or so, Matt, to the thing about how can you operationalize this and sort of think about how teams interact with each other. When you select people, recruit people for teams, you shouldn't be looking at the kind of individual that you're hiring, but the kind of relationships, the people that they will be when they are in that team. That's an interesting one.
I've been thinking about an idea for a while, and it's expressed in a very cheesy way, but you'll get the point, is we have been obsessed. And again, I think particularly in the tech industry with growth, everything is about growth, whether it's financial growth, whether it's about the size of our user base. And I think if we could shift from trying to build organizations based on growth to build healthy organizations and wealthy organizations, and wealthy is quite a broad term, that would be quite a fundamental mindset shift. And one of the reasons I've been thinking about that is there's a fair few people that I know in our industry at the moment who they've just had enough, and they're leaving their jobs with nothing to go to. Maybe they can take early retirement, maybe they just want some downtime, and then they're going to take a job in a shop to earn a bit of pin money. And I don't believe that in general we have healthy organizations at the moment. And I think the concept of psychological safety coming in is an incredibly powerful one. But again, are we doing more than paying lip service to concepts like that? But I think, and I've been thinking about this from like a political angle as well, but I think if we look at every decision that we're making and look at the impact on health and wealth rather than sort of growth and bottom line, that would change how we do things. And healthy teams will interact well with other healthy teams and create environments that people can thrive in. Whereas I think that the strongest focus on growth is what creates some of the most damaging capitalist patterns that we see.
And that's deeply distressing for me to talk about that, because I see the same thing, total burnout, shocking burnout. And you know, I work in big corporates and in government in Wellington, and across all of them, the culture's awful, and the burnout is shocking.
Mhm.
And it's distressing for me, because the answer, I'm going to sound all evangelist now, but the answer is out there. There are thousands of organizations around the world who are working in oops, this a teal way, man. I've got a teal wall. Oh, I can't get it. I've got a teal wall behind me, right? The the answers are out there. There's organizations who are organizations where people can thrive, where they can flourish, where well-being is paramount. But the bit that really grates for me is what Gary Hamel and Michelle Zazzini talked about in the fantastic book Humanocracy. They talked about that if you work that way, you actually get better productivity, you get richer. So, and Teal Unicorn, now I'm plugging, but we proved this with 20 organizations, right? Better results, more money on the table, more cash. Some of our clients, the staff are making double what they used to make before. We're not talking 5%, we're talking doubling the income of the staff. Better results, better lives, happy, right? More satisfied, less burned out people, and better society, ethically improved organizations making a more positive contribution to the society around. You know, we're doing this. It's not hypothetical, right? It's not just some guy in California wrote a book. It's absolutely 1,000 freaking organizations doing this around the world. So the answer, not only is the answer on the table, but the money is on the table. And I was talking about this just yesterday to someone. One of the big issues is capitalism, right? I'm a huge fan of capitalism, but not of unregulated capitalism. And right at the moment, the oligarchs are in control, not just in the USA, but all around the world, rising power of the oligarchs. And so the focus is on short-term profit, right? The shares are far too liquid. So I buy some shares, I want my cash, and then I want the value of them to go up, and I want to get out. I'm not buying shares for 10 years down the road, most people. Some pension funds and things, but a lot of people, certainly their staff at the front line buying and selling shares, are looking at short-term profitability of these things. And so the focus is always going to be on how much cash can we squeeze out in 3 to 6 months, which is always going to burn people out. If the focus is on how can we improve productivity over the next, only 2 or 3 years, we're not talking even, you know, we boost productivity within 3-6 months in a few clients that are smaller and more open to it, and within 12-24 months in bigger organizations. So there's all this latent productivity sitting on the table. So you can talk about things like morale and, you know, positivity and yada yada, which all sounds like hippie bullshit to a whole lot of these bosses. But you can just say, you idiots, there's money on the table. we could be doubling income. Then this is what's really stupid about it, is even the ultra-right oligarchs don't care. They're making so much money that they don't care that there potentially could be so much more for everyone, not for them, but for everyone. It's really grinds my gears.
It does. It grinds my gears too. It's totally negative. And to be honest, the capitalism isn't going to it's not going to get our businesses to switch to health and wellness as our targets, right? Like that's just not, it's not something that we can change necessarily. But I love the way that you put this, Rob. You don't have to hope for positive results. You don't have to, it's not a question anymore, right? If your executives and your board actually want you to be more successful and that is their idea, it can happen. You just need to pay attention.
It's on the table.
It's on the table.
And so obviously capitalism's not going to get any better in the next few years, right? I mean, this is clear. So let's not have all these mad ideas about tearing down the oligarchy and moving to, you know, it's not going to happen. But so therefore, my focus next year, like I said, is islands of light. One organization at a time. Just finding that amenable boss, one organization at a time, who wants to be that island of light in the storm, and that's going to be my focus, because I think the wagons do have to draw into a circle for the next few years. I'm just going to be trying to preserve as much as possible. Society moves 2 steps forward and 1 back, right? Right at the moment, we're taking that backward step. So I'm focused on just getting ready for the next 2 steps forward.
Yeah.
Whenever. Hopefully I'll live long enough to see the next 2 steps
And
forward.
also, I think there's a massive positive, which is the connections that technology enables, and the fact that we can sit here now in the UK, the Netherlands, New Zealand, and the USA having a chat, which is amazing. And we shouldn't ever lose sight of that. I had a weird I was thinking the other day about a meeting that I was part of, and it was on Teams, 15 people in the meeting, really good discussion. And when I remembered it as if it had been a physical meeting, as if we'd all been in the room together. And I had to remind myself that it had happened on Teams, because the connection that we had, the objective that we were working towards was so good. I made it a real memory, and I think that's a massive positive as well. And we shouldn't ever lose sight of the fact that, particularly in the service management world, we have such a good community, so supportive. Relationships going back 20 plus years, which is that's amazing.
It's
Claire,
magic.
out of interest, what percentage of the people, there's 15 people in that call, had you personally, physically met before?
I had exactly the same thought.
I think about half of them.
Okay, it's encouraging.
But not just encouraging. I think the key to online meetings working really well is when you've shared the air with a decent proportion of the people on the call before, as we have.
Yeah.
That we're animals. If we've shared pheromones at some point,
I'm going to say
past,
I can sniff your pheromones, Rob.
I can smell you through Zoom.
No, but I meant it the other way around. That the 50% that you hadn't met in person, that you managed to get a sort of I have the same thing. I feel that I have a good relationship with people that I have never met in person, only spoken online. I'm sure it's different. There must be a difference when you've met people physically, but for some people, you build up some kind of, there's some weird stuff going on that we're not aware of, I'm sure, which
it does
contributes
somehow
to
change when you meet in real life. But I was a second lifer for a few years long ago, and you do actually build relationships with people who not only have you not met, but they're not real.
Yeah.
And you're still be good mates.
Because you're building, mind you, it's the same with real people as well. You're building relationships with your story about somebody else. I'm not interacting with you, Claire. I'm interacting with my story about you. And it might be close, but
that's really interesting. If we come back to it, we should always keep trying to bring ourselves back to IT, we philosophers. But going back to another one of the great contributions from the late great Dr. Richard Cook was his concept of above the line models and below the line models. And so just in the same way that I have a model of each of you guys that I'm interacting with, that we have this model of IT, and that you've got this mental model of what you think the IT system is, which is not the same thing as what the IT system is. But you can't see digital information flashing at the speed of light through transistors. So you've got no idea what's really happening. No idea, none. No visibility at all of what's happening in the computers. You've got no concept of it. You build a mental model just from the limited information you get from the screens and the reports in front of you, and which
that's
will
right.
not be the same as the reality. And not only that, but each of the four of us would have a different mental model of the same
That's
idea.
right. That's right. Yeah, Cook called it the system as imagined versus the system as found. System as found you can touch. And the same in organizations. You can walk around in organizations. You can observe what is happening. You can have an experience, a genuine experience of what's happening. You can see people. But when you're back in your office and you're working with operating models, you're working on the system as imagined.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the thing about go to Genba in the lean world, Toyota production system, that you actually firsthand have to observe what's going on, speak with the people. That's the only way to know it. Well, almost for sure.
And
Yes.
Nick Taleb had a lovely word, platonicity, which is
Oh,
where you've fall in love with the platonic model you've built. In other words, the conceptual, what is it? System as imagined. You fall in love with that concept and you think it is reality. And then you're shocked when the system is imagined, the system is found doesn't behave the way you like. And this is what all management do, right? All management think the system works this way and lose complete, as you say, going to the Gemba mark, lose complete sight of what the system really is. And then they're shocked when the system doesn't work the way the system is imagined said it was going to work.
Yeah, or they try to make a change and then it doesn't work because they had this other model that didn't match what was actually happening.
And that's the challenge with experience management at the moment as well. I think we have more data about interactions than we've ever had before, but most of it is surveys and click here and do this and do that. And does that actually show us the human behind those surveys, or the human who just got cross and didn't do the survey? And it's more data, but worse data, I think.
More data, but less information.
That's right. Only this afternoon I drew a diagram, a line with the system as imagined on top, system as found down the bottom, and plotted four primary components of the XLA world there. You've got agreements and metrics up top, as imagined. They're social constructs. They don't exist other than in our minds. And below the line, you've got the actual service interactions that take place between people and things. And you've got how they experience those interactions. And what most of the people in the XLA world are working on is in the system as imagined, the agreements, which are supposed to predict, and the metrics. What's wrong with this picture?
Yeah, you cannot manage from those. You can't manage from metrics. You need to think about the experience first.
Oh, there's one thing I saw on LinkedIn. If you don't follow Henry Mintzberg, who was a god decades ago, but who is pushed to get 10 likes on a post of his nowadays. It is absolutely dreadful how short our memories are. I think today he posted something he'd published ages ago. He's sort of regurgitating stuff as well as producing new stuff. This was some old stuff. And it was, if you can't measure it, you'd better manage it.
Yeah.
That's a nice one.
It's better than the one that people say.
I might have got Mintzberg through you, Mark. I don't know, but I follow him avidly now. Just amazing.
He's fabulous. He's fabulous.
He's somehow forgotten.
Yeah, and he sort of rants about efficiency. Efficiency is a good thing. No, it isn't. takes all the slack out of the system, takes away all the variability which generates opportunities.
Bingo.
Everybody's obsessed with efficiency.
Yeah,
this grinds my gears too, right? That there were people like Mintzberg and Drucker and Deming were saying all the right things generations ago, not just decades, generations ago.
Yeah, I find myself.
Friedman is capitalist, greed is good, command and control, management by power, just swept it all off the table.
Yeah, and that's crazy. I find myself repeating Drucker lots of times. He talked about one of his famous things is the purpose of a company is to create and keep customers.
Yeah.
I'd expand that to create and keep stakeholders, broaden the perspective from customers, employees as well, partners. And another one of his was the two important functions of an organization are innovation and marketing. The rest is just cost. and of course, he's exaggerating for comedic effect, for impact. But in the essence, if you're talking about innovation and marketing in two functions, sensing what's going on in the world, after that, innovating to respond to it, to do something useful, and then promoting it, of course. Once you've decided what to do, the rest is just execution. If you think about that, all the value is created in coming up with something new that will continue, hopefully sustainable benefit for people on both sides of the demand-supply thing. It's basic stuff. Everybody's forgotten it.
Yeah, because we get lost.
Yeah, we're getting. I'm trying to think of trying to come up with a more IT concrete context for that one again to bring us back. It's so true.
Yeah, that's a hard one. But what's great is when I'm listening to this episode next year to plan for our next episode, we've got this stuff at the end so that I can actually put this together and we can continue this conversation in 2025. I want to thank you all for being here because it was an incredible conversation. We got philosophical to the max, more than last year, if that was even possible. And for you three, how can people connect with you and learn more? What do you want our audience to do? Rob, go.
Come and see Teal Unicorn. We're easily found on the internet, and I'm very active on LinkedIn. It's still, I haven't been driven out yet, Claire. I'm still hanging in there. That's still my primary point, and it's my engine, right? The interactions I have on LinkedIn are still the things that generate most of my thinking. So for people who want to reach out, that's still the primary platform and the Teal Unicorn presence.
Yep. And if you don't find him there, you can probably find him on Blue Sky, at least during this month. Don't tell me in 2025 he might be somewhere else, but you tell me where he is. Mark, how can people get in touch with you?
Dipping the toe in Blue Sky.
LinkedIn is the place for me as well. Connect with me there. Love to have little conversations with people. Sometimes they end up in chats, which are absolutely delightful. So feel free.
I love that. I love the idea of getting to spy on some of Mark's chats, his philosophical chats with people in the industry.
I'll tell you one thing to look forward to in the new book is I got into a chat with Claude again about thinking about the essence of design. What is design? And is design a human thing? And I decided that even crows can design.
Nice.
If you think about how creative crows are. So design is not a human thing. So that's a weird sort of philosophical thing. What is design? Design is non-binary. That's in the book.
This is why everyone wants Mark's job. Right there in a sentence. Claire, how can people connect with you and learn more?
I am still LinkedIn is my least worst option. So find me personally on LinkedIn. If you are curious about service integration, come to the Scopism website. There you'll find a link into our community. In there, we've got the bodies of knowledge, we've got global research, and we've got just an amazing group of people who chat, answer questions, and generally interact with each other. So I would recommend jumping into that as well.
Me too. I would totally recommend. Check out the Service North Conference too if you've never been. And thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining me on Ticket Volume, you guys.
Thank you, Matt. This has been great.
Yeah, thanks. It was nice to be here. In fact, it was nice. It's nice just to be. I highly recommend it.
I highly recommend it as well. And for our audience, did you know that you can change and improve this podcast? DM me, leave a comment. Just another way to turn up the ticket volume. And speaking of ticket volume, did you know that this podcast is brought to you by Invigate? Invigate is an asset-forward service management vendor who designs good software at a fair price. In fact, IT teams from Toyota, NASA, and McDonald's use Invigate to manage requests, automate workflows, and centralize inventory data so that they can focus on delivering better service, because good service is good business.